Hey, I'm Kai from Flamenco Explained. In this video, we're going to take a look at the Andalusian Cadence in a couple different keys. And the idea is, if you don't know what it is, you'll know what it is by the end of the video. But also the idea is to demystify playing in other keys in flamenco, right? I want to kind of show you how once you get the hang of this, you can figure out what's going on in the other keys that we play in flamenco. So we're going to look at 4 keys in this video. So if you're into knowing more voicings and having more options and going a little deeper into any of the keys we're talking about, just check out flamencoexplained.com, where we have tons more than what I'm going to get into in this video. So the basic idea of the Andalusian Cadence, or what it is really just this. That relationship, right? So we're going to look at specifically what's happening in this key. But what we have is the tonic, you know, the main chord, the home chord, in this case is E, right? We call this por arriba when we play in E Phrygian, right? So the chords are based on an A minor, a G, an F, and an E. So one of the easiest ways to sort of understand this is to start with a tonic, right? We're in E Phrygian, so we start with the E. The next chord up is a half step away, which is just 1 fret, so F. The next chord up is a whole step away, so 2 frets. That gives us our G, and the next chord up is 2 frets away, which gives us our A minor, right? So this relationship of, or more familiarly, that's really the heart of the Andalusian Cadence. And then we harmonize it, minor, major, major, major. And we can also play 7 chords, so minor 7, dominant 7, dominant. But then the 1 chord, it's not dominant. There actually really isn't a 7 chord for the tonic in flamenco, right? So either we're playing an E major triad, or more commonly an E major triad with the F, right? So this note that we make the 2nd chord out of, right, call that the flat 9, is often, very often added to our 1 chord, right? So that's basically it. That's the Andalusian Cadence, right? You have minor, major, 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 or you can have minor 7, dominant, dominant, triad, or triad with the flat 9. Sometimes we'll add dominance to that, but we're not going to look at that in this video, right? Because I just kind of want to get around the different keys, right? So this concept that we talked about, right? What is this Andalusian Cadence? If we transpose it from E to A, right? Let's just think about the concept, right? We have A as our tonic, right? The next chord up is a half step. The next chord up is a whole step away from that, and then another whole step, right? And we said minor, major, 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 major with the flat 9. So we're looking for a B flat, and very often, most often we add it here, right? So that's our home chord. So we have D minor, C, B flat, A, or D minor 7, C7, B flat 7, A, and there's all kinds of voicings, of course, but these are kind of the basics. Let's look at the 2 other super common keys in flamenco that aren't quite as common as these. And what's interesting about these, right, we're talking about the Granaína key, which is B Phrygian, and the Taranta key, which is F sharp Phrygian. Each one of these is a whole step up from the 2 we looked at, right? So if we look at Taranta first, it's a whole step up from por arriba, right? So our tonic, our home, is this note, right? So the concept is we go up a half step, we go up a whole step, we go up a whole step, right? And this one's minor, this one's major, this one's major, and this one is a major triad, or it has the... But this is where some of the real fun comes in, because what makes this key and this key sound so distinctive is the way the open strings interact with the key that we're playing in, especially on that 1 chord. So even though really, based on what I said earlier, it should either be a triad or a triad with an added G natural here, the flat 9, really what we end up doing in Taranta is playing all these open strings, right? So I can have this chord, I can have this chord, I can have this chord. These are all variations of that chord that are specific to this key, right? We're not taking the concept of, you know, oh, what is the E? It's the flat 7 if I'm in F sharp, therefore I'm gonna transpose it in, right? We're not worried about that. We're really just being guitarists and playing with the open strings, right? So in this case we have B minor, A, G to F sharp, and very often we'll play these voicings, which really make use of the open strings a lot, right? So for our B minor, we leave the G and the E open. For our A7, we leave the G and the E open, right? Our G is here, and then we have all these variations here, right? Or sometimes we'll do this B minor, this A, and this G, and this F sharp, right? So we're having a lot of fun with the open strings, but the basic idea is the same as the other keys in terms of what the cadence is, right? The last key we're going to look at is the Granaína key, which is B Phrygian. So really you could kind of take everything we just did here and just do it with your roots on the 5th string. Or you could think of por medio, right? A Phrygian, and everything's up a whole step, because instead of this being our tonic, this is our tonic, right? So again, we have our tonic, then we're up a half step, up a whole step, up a whole step, which gives us E minor, D, C, B Phrygian, right? So if we're gonna play exactly this chord, but move it up a whole step, we would just bar and play the same chord. But this being flamenco and this being the guitar, we use the open strings to make voicings like this. Or, right, there's a lot of cool stuff we do, and that's why this key is actually a valid alternative to just putting a capo on the 2nd fret, right? If I put a capo on the 2nd fret and I play things that look exactly like this, I'll be in the same key, but I don't get the distinctive flavor of Granaína, which is the open strings interacting with this key. Those 4 are really, I would say, if you're a flamenco guitarist and you're, you know, trying to have your bases covered, those are the 4 keys you really need to know, right? You start with E, which is A minor, G, F, and E, and then you move to por medio, right, which is D minor, C, B flat, and A, and the Taranta key, F sharp, you have B minor, A, G, and F sharp, and then the Granaína key, B, which is E minor, D, C, and then B flat. And as I said, if you want to know more about the specific voicings we use for these keys, go to flamencoexplained.com, where we have tons of stuff. We go much more in depth about all of this stuff. But this concept is very cool, because if you suddenly wanted to learn about playing in C sharp Phrygian, for example, right, which is a thing, you don't have to really know a whole lot about theory, right? You don't have to understand anything else, except you have to know where the C sharp is, right? So we'd go up a half step, up a whole step, up a whole step. I'm not even going to talk about the names of these chords. I'll just play a minor, right, and a major, and a major, and a triad with my flat 9. And I could do those with 7 chords, except for on the 1. We never use a 7 chord on that 1. And then I would start playing around with open strings, right? Does that sound right? Does this sound right? Does this sound right? I mean, it's certainly interesting. And you can find all kinds of interesting things by borrowing shapes from other keys that you know and seeing if the chords sound good with the available open strings. So now you really have a system for understanding how to basically play in any key, right? Because this is really the essence of the harmonic context of Phrygian keys in flamenco. There's a lot more to it, right? This is the basics of it. But once you get this concept, you should be much more comfortable on the guitar, you know, when you're thinking about playing in a new key, and hopefully you won't be so overwhelmed.